she can get in. What I wanted to talk to you guys about, and I think all of us, well, I don't know. Carolyn, you might not. Going from Carolyn down, just tell us a quick bit about who you are, because I know who you are, but everybody else might not.
Okay. Well, my name is Carolyn. Born in Haiti, grew up in Miami. God, what else can I say about myself? I think the most significant thing about me is I went through this religious journey and then lost my faith and wrote a book about it called Still Small Voices. And since that's happened, I'm currently really interested in Black politics.
Carolyn and I had a very long, interesting conversation the first time we chatted.
We did.
It went deep. It went deep. And I think most people know who you are, either from here, or we chat back and forth on Twitter, or we talk about your books.
Oh, me? Yeah, man. I never know how to really introduce myself, because every time I try to do that, then I end up leaving out something that someone's like, oh, and then there's that and there's that, you know. So I'm at Lattimore. I exist on social media quite heavily. I write. I used to box. I studied physics. I travel, and I try to pick up as much as I can about the world and give people back out, I think, useful information to deal with it. Certainly seems to be going well. People are getting a lot out of it. I can tell that because of my bank account and my social media following. So other than that, that's just who I am, and hopefully.
When you say you study physics, are you being modest?
I mean, I study. I guess I got a degree in physics, but I don't.
Are you being modest, Ed?
Well, it's the same thing. Yeah, you know, I got my degree in physics. Went back to school as an adult. At 28, decided that I was going to end up with a physics degree. The original plan was just pure mathematics, and then through a series of experiences, I ended up with a physics degree. Life is funny that way. So, which is basically a math degree. Like, let's not get that twisted. They're basically a math degree. So,
that's awesome. That's
yeah, really. Who knew, right? I failed math all of high school, and then it ended up working out that because of boxing and watching myself improve in boxing, I said, okay, if you can improve here, why can't you take that same mentality and improve in physics? So when I went back to school, finally, after I had started my boxing career and had been involved for a pretty long time, it was I applied that same ethic to learning, and I had figured out a lot about learning as well. So it really worked out, and I enjoy it. Now I'm like dealing, like, in my spare time, I tutor kids in math and physics, and I'm like, okay, could I go back and do this? There are some interesting problems I'm kind of interested in, but I want to finish making a lot of money so I don't have to worry about anything, and then I'll probably get back to helping the world.
Okay. You there, Conway?
We do introductions. I was letting people go up, talk, and listen. I don't know. I don't like to talk about myself too much. I guess I've had a very interesting life. I guess I did go to school. I studied. I was doing my liberal arts degree. Got bored of it. You know, I was like, I don't really see myself doing anything, long term, and it was expensive as it was. So I was like, all right, screw it. I'll just go into the workforce and start working and kind of figure it out on the way. And I figured I had a gift for talking to people, working with people. I actually started doing stand-up comedy for a while.
Oh, nice.
And I got a big. I was actually getting some notoriety around town. I did a few independent shows, like 2 Black independent shows, and then one kind of just more Caucasian, that group of people. So I was able to kind of cross market, and people, I got a fan base. The only caveat with that is I was really sick, so dealing with like kidney issues. So once the resolution of that, which was like a transplant, came by, I was out for a while. I was out for like a year and a half. So that buzz just kind of died down. And so when I came back, not those the same, and then you got life experiences, so that changes you. But now I'm into traveling. I'm getting into programming. I want to kind of start programming and change, my career path. I don't know, big family. I got like 15 brothers and sisters, so I don't know. I mean, I'm an enigma of sorts. I guess that's the best word to put it.
Huh. Enigma, I like that. So what I was going to say is, Ed, you touched on something a second ago. What you said is that you want to make sure your bank account is right first.
Right.
And what I wanted to really get to is we talked earlier about, and this is something I've kind of touched on. I want to talk about two things. And I want to talk about basically haves and have-nots, because I never used the word rich and poor. Oh, hey, Letitia, there you are.
What's up?
Wow, you bring so much enthusiasm to the conversation. Well, listen, what we're talking about, and this is something that I'm not sure if all of us do. I know for certain Ed, Letitia, myself, perhaps Gonway, and maybe Carolyn, between haves and have-nots in 2019, has the internet made it easier for people to make more money, or has it stratified people? Because I had a reason to me earlier this week that the internet did nothing but take people who are already successful or already going to be successful and give them a microphone, as opposed to the people who don't have that opportunity were never going to make it in the first place. And I don't know how I feel about that. And to self-disclose, I'm fortunate. I'm Generation X. I don't know what your age ranges are, but Generation X, I didn't realize till many years later, we came out of college with a huge amount of advantages as far as the way the internet was popping off. Jobs were there, money was there, government programs were there for startups, and we really hit the ground running, whereas I have younger cousins graduating university now that are just sad. They said that they don't have any of those things. And I tell them the internet is a great gateway because for free, you can get out there and bring your product to people, but they don't see it the same way. Carolyn, you're the newest to the junk pile. What do you want to go first?
Sure. I don't think the internet, yes, it's creating opportunities. However, I don't feel like people are doing better in terms of the fact that we see more income stratification. So yes, there's this new avenue here, and it's breaking traditional avenues where people had security. But if we just want to look at, well, are people therefore doing better, we can just look at the data on income inequality, and we see that that's increasing. More people are on the bottom. So you've got, and I would take it outside of the internet. I mean, well, it's related to yours. So you've got like Uber and those new forms of earning money that's been made possible through technology. But Uber is not like when my uncle was driving his cab. Like, people who are doing that aren't going to make the money that you used to be able to make when you were driving a cab and build the kind of stable middle class life. So in a way, like, that's instability is allowing a small group of people to amass wealth because they can reach out further than they used to be, but it's also leaving a lot of people behind.
Huh. So you're saying the Uber driver is not a social equivalent to a taxi driver?
Absolutely.
It's not. I agree. I drove Uber 2 years, so I would definitely say in the way that they structure things is a little bit different. Especially now, because like every 6 months, Uber changes how they reimburse people. I mean, at first, like, I was making bank, but by the end, it was like not even worth it because they were taking so much of the fee, like adding so many fees onto what the fare was, that you weren't making money.
Wow. Because I'm here in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and I remember Uber just started taking over in China right when I left, and the Chinese government did what they do with their entire business model. They'll copy a Western way of doing it poorly and then take out the original, but you can't put the genie back in the bottle for a lot of people out here, and I understand it's a different economy. Uber and side driving, it can really make them, it can make a difference for these people. But it's not.
I mean, it does. I would say it does make a difference, but when I started driving Uber, I was in Virginia Beach, and I think just the percentage of how much I made decreased over the 2 years because of the way that they were doing things. Now, it's not like it's not a good side hustle, but at the beginning I was making way more just because they were only taking like 5% of your fare. And by the time I left, they were taking like 25%.
Wow. And quick shout out to the five, 6 people who are watching right now. Everybody who's watching, please click the like button because it matters, you know. And also, if you have a question or something to say, leave it in the chat. We address it. But I want everybody to add a quick thumbs up. Adrian Phoenix said, "A bit of invisible enslavement, as most people aren't aware." Adrian, do you mean when you say a bit of invisible enslavement, meaning the reimbursements for something like Uber aren't as good as it used to be? Is that what you mean? Can you go into better detail? Gonway.
Hello. So I mean, in reference to the internet question, I think the internet has made people way more profitable. I mean, let's just say, like, for example, blogs, right? Why are some blogs successful? Why are some blogs, why do they struggle to hit 1,000 views, per week or maybe per day? It really just comes down to quality. People are willing to pay for and pay attention to something that they feel has quality. So, I mean, I think people have to take on the burden of that responsibility of producing something that people want to buy. I mean, people don't just buy Jordans because of Jordan. I mean, Shaq made shoes, and them shoes was terrible. I used to wear those in gym class. I used to trip over myself all the time. You know what I'm saying? So I think people will pay for quality, and it doesn't matter. I mean, let's just say, why does Audi get people, get the money that they do, and American car companies are struggling? Because in general, Audis have a better longevity. You know what I'm saying? So let's just put the style aside. That European cars, foreign cars usually have better longevity. So I think in the means of the internet, you have to look at what the product is and what the quality is. I do customer service and technical support as far as what my day job is. So, and people always say, one bad review on, whether it's Yelp or Google, that could be 10,000 people who see that and say, I'm not even going to bother. I'm not even going to bother going with them because so-and-so person who I don't even know said it was a terrible experience. So I think it really just comes down to quality and how you present it. I mean, you don't have to present the same way. It just has to be something that people find value in, and they're attracted to that. So I'd say people share some of the burden on that as far as the producer on that.
Yeah, I really disagree. I think that there's no amount of high quality service you can provide as an Uber driver that's going to make up for the way the rules are set. I did it just as a social experiment for about a month. And when I factored in gas and mileage on my car, I would have been much better off taking a minimum wage job. I did Uber Eats just to kind of get a feel for, well, what is that like? And I was just doing it kind of like after work on the weekend. And to me, like, what has not happened with the new platforms we have is we don't have the same rules. So what makes wealth is not so much, hey, you can get out there and be great. Lots of people are great at lots of things. We have our rules. And if the rules are stacked against you making money because it's kind of a free for all, you've got this large institution like Uber that can create rules that are not beneficial to the masses, and those people are not organized in a way to combat that and set different rules for themselves, they're not going to have access to wealth.
So are we not just having the same argument that every society in modern history has had? We're talking about the difference between the producers and the workers. I mean, I only speak for myself in this next one because I don't know everyone else's business model, but I know what it's like to be an employer and to be the person that brings people in. And you're always going to be at that crossroads where you realize you can't make decisions that help the workers and the owner. And it's a very difficult situation when you realize, sometimes the system is definitely going to be rigged against the people who are the workers. But doesn't the internet provide us a situation where fewer people can be the workers and most people can where fewer people can be? I told you should tie the children to the bed while you're online. But doesn't that give
that is completely unacceptable. These are my minions, right? Like I got minions.
But do you see what I'm saying? So I agree with you, Carolyn. I 100% agree with this whole no, it's not fair. The question becomes, has any system of work been fair? And doesn't the internet give us a situation where I can say, I know the game is rigged. I'm not going to, I mean, I'm fortunate. I worked in the financial industry for about 10 years, 9.5, 10 years. And it gave me a very big insight into money. It taught me how to bring my own clientele. It taught me how to represent clients to different industries. And I broke off and I started my copy editing business. And I do a few other things. But the internet allowed me to say, you know what? From a very early age, I'm just going to work for me. Ed, you want to jump in? I noticed you've just been sitting back kind of absorbing it.
Yeah, I was just weighing what everyone was saying and what I think. First, my opinion, and then I'll reinforce it. My opinion is that the internet has made it possible for anyone to make money and to free themselves or to separate their location from their income, which is what I think a lot of us want to do. That's why driving for Uber is more appealing initially than taking a minimum wage job, because even though you're looking at the money, the thing you get back is this sense of freedom. Even if it's kind of a semi-freedom, you're not beholden to a location and you don't have someone managing you directly. You really get the satisfaction. There's three things you need to feel satisfied at your job. You need to have your income scale to your effort. You need autonomy, and you need complexity. And Uber kind of provides all that. A minimum wage job doesn't, even if the income is lower. So to the Uber example that was given, I would say Uber satisfies something else that traditional employment can't satisfy, even if you take a hit on the income. To the general discussion, the issue is that there is more opportunity, and the people who were going to, like you said, like it just gave a microphone, and the people who were going to already be successful are already going to be successful. Sure, that's correct, but you have to remember that the people who are going to become successful do so with a certain set of traits, and all technology does is amplify what's already within you. The same technology that allows you to make a living or to even set this channel up that we're on right now is the same technology that allows you to waste your whole day watching internet porn and Netflix. Most people are going to choose the option that requires less energy. That's why there will always be more bosses than employees, more producers than or more more employees than bosses, and more consumers than producers. That's just human nature. All technology has done is leverage that, but it has also removed a barrier. There used to be a barrier to setting up an e-commerce business. Now anyone who really wants to sit there and learn how to drop ship or wants to learn how to private label, they can do that. There used to be a barrier on getting your personality.
Ed, I think the words you just used are common in our world. Can you tell us what drop shipping and private label is? Because there are going to be people who either they might want to be interested in how to learn more about that, because that's common to you and I, but I want you to break it down for people who are watching.
So drop shipping and private labeling are two legs of the same idea, which is where you get a product wholesale and you ship it at your own markup for whatever reason, whether it be branding, well, not whether it be, it will be branding that separates your product once you buy it at the lowest level wholesale. The difference between drop shipping and private labeling: drop shipping is where you set up I guess a conduit for you to get someone else's product out, and private labeling is where you set up the product yourself and put your own brand on it and ship it and handle it, that aspect. For a private labeler would have drop shippers, but a drop shipper wouldn't have private labelers. That kind of deal.
The example that I give people is a woman explained something to me, and I want the women to tell me if you believe this is not true, because maybe I got bad information. Women's black eyeliner, the stick that you have to sharpen, every single drop of it is made from the same chemical and comes from the exact same place in the world. The only difference is how every company purchases and packages it, whether it be a high-end label like Maybelline, which puts labeling on the label and sells it for $15, or the dollar store brand that puts dollar on the side and sells it for $1. But it's all the exact same product. The only difference is who markets it and sells it to you.
mean, I don't know, but that seems absolutely plausible. I believe it.
She worked in the makeup business, and she did the when you walk in, as we see the setup design for where the makeup counter is, she did that, and she told me, yeah, that I don't know about any other piece of makeup, but for that specific item, she says that's one of the largest money makers for any makeup company, because it's all in how you advertise it. Do I advertise it to a high end place with with Angela Bassett holding it in her hand so I can sell it to you for $25, or do I sell it to you with Susan from down the road saying I bought it for $1?
Right. And that's what the internet has done, is that it's allowed anyone, it's removed the biggest barrier, which is location, and to a degree it's removed the second largest barrier, which is startup capital. Now really all that matters is one's own initiative and one's own ability to go and learn and do and suffer, make the mistakes, to kind of grit and to get after it. I don't think we'll ever get a system that creates wealth for everyone. That's almost, I'm not sure, I've been debating it back and forth, but right now I've moved back to the side where I do believe that is impossible. I think capitalism at the larger scale is a zero-sum game. I don't believe it creates wealth. And I've had a few thoughts about that. I think it just redistributes it and perhaps re-leverages it. But there'll never be a system that lets everyone raise up. They've tried that, and we know what happens when we try to compensate every human equally. We're not big fans of that, because even though we may want what the rich guy has or whatever, we know that there's something very wrong with that, and we rebel. And on top of that, it doesn't meet the market demand, because there will be a few people who have an incredible amount of drive, but you disincentivize those people, and there'll be a larger amount of people who have an average amount of drive, but somehow they're going to get the same thing, and no one's going to be really happy or feel content with that. But that's a different discussion. The main idea, though, to summarize my argument, is that the internet has made it possible, but it hasn't changed human nature.
You know what? Hold on one quick second, because I always want to address the people in the chat that are watching and want to say something real quick. Adrian said that the internet gives access to essentially all knowledge. I agree, Adrian. The ability to improve on anything. I agree. The willingness to learn is lacking in most people. Are the ones capable but not willing deserving? And that's a deep question, because I know personally I bled for the knowledge I have that made me what I am and got me successful. But he's saying, are the people who aren't willing to bleed worthy of the fruit? That's a hypothetical question. You can think about it later.
I think somebody who gets out there and tries to make it, whether it's, again, driving Uber or whatever, is bleeding. Now, does everyone have the same capacity, the same intellectual capacity, the same initiative level? That has never been the case, and it's never going to be the case. It does not follow that unless you have an IQ of 120 or whatever measurement you want to sort of place on these people deserve a good life, everybody else should really be at subsistence level, right? And you don't have to go to the extremes of, yeah, we tried communism and that was a disaster, so therefore we need hyper-capitalism. We could simply look right, or at least for me right here in America, at what rules did we have in the post-war world before Reagan for white Americans. That's a stable system that distributed wealth in a more equitable way without necessarily requiring that everybody has the same level of intelligence or initiative.
Well, I want to make sure I don't misunderstand before we all, just to make sure that I understand the last thing you said.
Okay.
Are you saying that the way that wealth was distributed after, what was it, World War II, you said?
So for white Americans, after World War II, before Reaganomics.
Right.
So 1950s, 60s, and 70s, for white Americans, there were rules that allowed a middle class to develop for white Americans that were more equitable. They were based on unions and labor laws that were tougher. And so people were making money, but the gap between, the executive at a company and the lowest wage worker was not what it was today. And that's
to ignore that the reason that system worked was because A, there was no competition from any woman and anyone who wasn't black. I mean, Yeah, it works great if you can narrow down the possible group of competitors and say we're just going to share what's left. It was great back then.
Because I don't think it's just that, because even for white Americans, those rules have changed. And I don't think it's just because they're.
I agree, but when we talk about the post-World War America you're talking about, that was a world where I as a black man and you as a woman could never compete. So of course there's a bigger piece of the pie and everybody got to have a house and
there were also different rules in terms of how you paid workers and the treatment, and those rules have constantly been dismantled.
But the same rules that we're talking about kept black people out of unions that made everyone else prosper.
That is why I identified the group that benefited as white Americans. There is a possibility that we could simply expand those rules. At least we can run that experiment, right? Perhaps I'm wrong, but we have not tried that experiment. We have not tried, hey, let's keep those rules we had for those years and include women and minorities.
Brother Ed, I think you had your hand up for a second. I don't know if you were about to jump in. It was like double.
You said something and it chimed in my mind. Oh, right. Why the rules worked in a post World War II world. You elaborated on that. Yeah, when you reduce competitors, then you have a bigger piece of the pie. But even to something else, right? Today, right, the concept of wealth inequality is a bit different today. I always tell people that you don't need to be stellar to have a great quality of life. You could have a great apartment and all the fixings you could live for about $1,000 a month and I live in Pittsburgh so that's a major city, not a huge one. It's not New York City, but it's a city. It's got everything here, and you can live for about that. And the only reason that's possible is technology has made everything so much cheaper and so much easier that they're right. While yes, there is going with the argument that wealth is more concentrated into a few hands. Well, the standard of life is so much higher, but the cost of attaining it is so much lower than it's ever been. I mean, there's no way we could live the way we live. Even 50. Here's a great experiment, right? I'm going to assume no one here watches TV, right? But of course we do really watch TV. And if you walk through any Target or Best Buy, you can see the cost of a television that used to be $2,500. You can get it now for $400. And but this laptop I'm on, 10 years ago, this was a $1,500 machine minimum. This cost me $350. And I just got a buddy of mine a laptop for $200, because his broke. It's so cheap now to live that you don't need to be wealthy. Sure, it helps, right? Or rather, more money never hurts is a better way to put it. But do you really need it? No, because the people who made all that money, a lot of them made our lives easier. For example, Jeff Bezos made all that money while he solved the really pressing problem. Bill Gates made all that money while he radicalize the world. And then people down the line who are trickled from that, who distribute or manage the different channels that all that is distributed in, they help. But ultimately, I don't think you need to be rich. It's certainly nice, but do you need it? Not really.
Well, let's be careful with that word though, because rich.
Okay, I'll use a more precise word. You're right. I don't think that. Here's a better way to put it. I don't think the quality of life, at least in developed Western nations, is that much different between the middle class and the upper class. And I think the difference is probably a little smaller between lower class and middle class. Now, when you get below the poverty level, that's a different thing. I think that's a different set of problems. But if we break it into the main classes, low, middle, and upper, I don't think the quality of life amongst those three is that different, regardless of the income.
I disagree. The difference in lifestyle between low and middle, no matter how you define it in the United States, is pretty severe.
Lifestyle or like an example.
Well, here's the difference. This is how I would measure haves and have-nots. Ready? Can you save 1% of your income without it impacting any of your bills? That's how I look at it, and that's one of the rules. Okay. Can you take 20% of your income off the top and put it somewhere? I don't care if it's Bitcoin. I don't care if it's bonds. I don't care if it's investment. Can you take 20% and put it away? If the answer is no, go ahead.
Oh yeah, okay. No, you're right there, but I don't think that you're gonna starve, or rather, just do your difference between a good neighborhood, or at least one where you're not gonna get shot and have to worry about gang violence and the type of food you can put on your plate. I don't think the difference is. I won't say it's non-existent because obviously it is.
Why would you think?
So,
wait, Letitia, your eyes got big for a second. What were you gonna say?
I mean, I feel really just like flabbergasted that that would be an opinion that anyone has. Like, I live in the mountains in Appalachia. Like, the difference between middle class people and the poor folks is like night and day. And I mean, I've seen that there's people in the mountains here that live the same level of subsistence that I've seen in third world countries. So it's confusing to me. It's confusing to me that anybody would say that.
I put that in my mind. Low class and below poverty level are two different things, and it sounds like you're describing below poverty level, and I preface that.
But I don't understand why you like the middle class has been shrinking. That's the difference. There's not really a low class. Like there's not like the stratification isn't middle class, less than middle class, poor. The stratification that we have now is ultra rich, a tiny strip of middle class, and everybody else is destitute. So that's the thing that I'm confused about.
Yeah. I mean, and the thing is, I try to, without sounding condescending, I have to always temper what I'm saying for people who don't really work in microeconomy. Like there's macroeconomics. I worked in microeconomics. I worked with families every day. I worked with business owners who had been to college, done nothing wrong, put their money away, and I watched what happened to their families when they lose just a small percentage, because a lot of those, again, Generation X, a lot of those government incentives, a lot of the things that help people along, those things are gone.
Those are gone. Our umbrella stuff that we used to have to be able to catch people before they got to that destitution level have been decimated. We don't have that safety net anymore. All of that's been removed. So you get to a point, say, you know, you're middle class, like whatever, you have a good job, you have a good car, you can have a car repair, a medical bill, you can get like have to have a tooth pulled, and your whole stuff is messed up and you cannot get back out of it.
Thank you. You know, working in the financial business, I had clients that I wish I could tell you were bad people, but most people are one major accident away from finding out their life insurance and disability insurance they should have had, but they couldn't afford, might have saved them a little bit, but finding out that the insurance and things their company gives them account for almost nothing. Most people are 2 weeks away, one paycheck away, one paycheck away from being evicted. You know, when you talked about that $1,000 a month in Pittsburgh, I challenge you to break down your budget the way I break it down. For example, I talk about
what I was gonna say is yeah, she made a good point about something that I didn't. One of the things that happened to me, and you know, Yusef, not everyone else here, I think what happened to me, and it has perhaps distorted some of my opinions, and that they have not caught up yet, is that the class that I existed in changed so rapidly that if I try to draw from my experience and look at what life was like in the projects and what life is like now, I have to go there was a jump, and the whole, what did you say? The amount of money between an accident and wiping you out. Yeah, that you're right. Most people can't do that. And so I guess rescind, edit, remove my former opinion. I don't know what the right word is, but yeah, if we look at class like that, and to go on what you said about, you know, can you take a percentage of your income and save it away? Yeah, and that makes a big difference. So if you can't do that, yeah, I would say there's definitely some disadvantages you face. to the point though that we started, I think the internet does give people a chance to kind of close that gap.
I wanted to disagree again in that I think that I'm glad you're revising that opinion. To me, the internet right now is a bit of a Wild West. And it is going to allow, or like, can you imagine like, in the gold rush? Yeah, there were people who went out and they made tons, but there were also a lot of victims and a lot of people who really, just in that walked to the West, either didn't make it, or when they got there, they didn't, there wasn't that pot of gold that they were expecting. I shared an article in our group chat about what poverty means in terms of your life expectancy. And when you have a situation in America, when that is growing, what we're really saying is that certain people are going to live about 10 years less than other people because of the stress and the diseases that come with being a poor person. That's a very serious thing. And that also has to do with rules. It's not just about capitalism, right? So we don't, as I said earlier, we don't have to go full on communist to have different rules. We can look north of the border in Canada, and we can see that the average middle class family makes more money than the average middle class family here. We can look at certain European countries where they have McDonald's. Right. Most people have different incomes. And so there are ways that we can find a middle ground here. That doesn't mean like everybody, like these groups of people are going to have like high-end access to medical care. And then these other people live 10 years less because they can't afford it.
Yeah, one of the things I talk to my buddy about this, and I go, right, we look at how other countries in Europe and Canada, particularly how they do it, and the trade-off, funnily enough, is the one no one here, especially in lower income positions or middle income positions, wants to make, which is, well, their tax rate is higher. It's a lot harder to accumulate excess money, but everyone is taken care of, and that's kind of the trade-off that no one here is ever willing to make to improve the condition of everyone.
And I agree. That's something that we don't address enough. America, although it is not the top country for it, it's one of the few countries where, and I say this as a Black American, you can go from your entire group of people being almost nothing to having something. I don't know any of the countries that I've lived in where that's possible, where anyone who was not born into the disadvantaged group or caste system has any opportunity to get out of it.
Yeah.
And talking about that cost of living thing, and when we talk about medicine, and I had a long conversation with two doctors on a previous chat that I made public. One of the things we don't think about, particularly if you come from America, is how different your life would be if you didn't have to worry about medical expenses. Because America is one of the only quote unquote civilized nations where you have to worry about paying for your own medicine. Like I live in Brazil,
yeah.
I'm healthy, but the concept of why do so many Americans go to other countries and become successful? Well, when a guy, I don't have a wife and I don't have any kids, but when a guy with a wife and kids has a business idea, he can't afford to mess that up in America. He has to work that 9 to 5 in case his kid gets sick or his wife gets breast cancer. But in other countries where he knows the medical is taken care of, the worst that's going to happen is he loses his money, but he doesn't lose his life.
Now, because one thing I did want to mention too, that like when we were talking about the shrinking middle classes, I do HR, human resources. So a lot of things one of the major things that I do during the year is to review the costs of the insurance and stuff that is available to the employees that I service. And so just the cost of that and the benefits that they are actually providing for the cost has changed. So say, for example, you have a medical plan that you're used to that, you have a zero deductible and it, I remember when I first started, you'd have plans that were even offered to people who had really good jobs, zero deductible, and, it would cover everything. So the things that I've noticed in the last couple of years that has changed is that even though people still think they have insurance and they're signing up for medical plans, they would start off like, okay, before your medical coverage even kicks in, you have to take on like $4,000 worth of costs before the insurance will pay for anything. So that's a big,
the hard way.
Right. So that's a big thing. So that, even if you don't think about how that nickel and dimes everyone in the company. So even if you're making you know, $100,000 a year. If you got 2 or 3 kids and you have to pay $4,000 out of your own pocket for each child, if they have anything before the medical coverage will even cover, that takes a lot out of your pocket. So, I mean, you can, if anything happens to you, and I mean, you know, you think, oh, $100,000 a year, that's a decent salary. But if anything happens, you can go from that middle class, comfortable level to nothing, but you already have this huge house and cars and all these expenses.
You're already in the hole every month for 5
right,
days.
right, because you're basing your expenses that you think that you're going to be able to cover on your salary, but not taking into all these extra incidental costs that are snuck in on the backside.
Can I ask a question to you Americans? I think you're all American, right?
Yes.
Oh,
well,
yeah.
I am.
Yeah.
No, wait, is everybody American?
It's because of your background. There's this thing of Americans going to like Cuba, to Asia for medicine. Is that very common, or is that just rich people who do that?
No.
Well, I think it's cheaper now. Cause like, just for an example, I have friends that do it. Cause like Costa Rica, for example, that's a place that I go a lot. And it's cheaper for us to fly from Atlanta to Costa Rica, $350. Now, if you take that $350, that's round trip to another country, you can go and get, and it costs $7 a month for you to be there to have full medical coverage. I know this because I've done it.
$7.
And that's $7 a month as somebody out of the country. If when you go and you get your visa, as part of your visa package, you have to pay for medical insurance. Whether you're there a week, whether you're there for 5 months, that's way cheaper a deductible. Yeah. It's cheaper for me to do like book a flight once every 3 months, go to Costa Rica, get a physical, get all my medication, and do all of that stuff than it is to have insurance in the United States. It's cheaper. Like it costs $1,500 to fly to Hawaii. It costs anywhere from $600 to, you know, whatever, to fly to the other side of the United States. But you can leave the country, go get medical stuff, come back, and still be good.
I gotta ask a question because this sounds great to me. Are you telling me that I can book a flight and built into the cost of my visa is because, you know, I'm planning to relocate in the middle of the later on, but while I'm here, yo, that's great.
Hold on, let me scare you, Ed. Ready?
Uh-huh.
And Leticia, you can jump in on this because you have some input on it. You were a professional boxer, right?
Right.
Good luck when you go to get any kind of insurance for yourself or if you have a family in the future, because anything that goes wrong with you, they will say is a direct result of you getting punched in the head and will not be covered.
True.
Watch it happen. I have a buddy of mine that happened to, and he's only an amateur Brazilian jiu-jitsu player. They tried to say that anything that happened to him was a result of him going to jiu-jitsu tournaments. You have to hire lawyers that cost you more money than an insurance policy because they know if they just keep hitting you with no, you'll probably go away because it's a dirty business to begin with. Then you get people like who had a motorcycle accident and it knocked out all his front teeth. I remember we went down to Mexico, and in one 24-hour period, they put him in a little room, they gave him what they call television teeth. His whole grill got made up like his teeth were like a military cemetery, right?
Wow.
And it cost him 150 US. I'm in Brazil right now, which isn't even a hotbed for it, but my buddy moved down here. He and his wife have a company. They moved down here. His wife was like, you know, I was thinking about getting some new tits. And I introduced her to some of my friends, and women pass around doctor's business cards like, you know, like it's no big deal. She was like, well, shit, for these prices, I'm getting everything done. She's getting the whole package. And I'm recreational.
Look, you can go to another country and have the bionic woman if you want to. You can't do that in the United States.
Think about Thailand. I lived in Thailand for a couple of years. I knew people that were coming down there. You could get yourself a nice little hostel next to a 5-star hospital that had world-class doctors, and you could get transitioned from a man to a woman in a couple weeks and build in a 2-month vacation afterwards for almost nothing. And I don't mean dirty doctors. I don't mean some bullshit. I mean, what we don't understand is that in the United States, the markup on anything is so expensive, and it keeps you in that system. It keeps you from being able to raise out of that system.
I've been reading about how to become a doctor in the US if you're a foreign doctor.
How to become a woman, and I was going to say, wow, that's okay.
Maybe later, like, I'll do a Bruce Jenner or something. But it's really tricky to become a doctor in the US if you're, for example, trained in India or Sri Lanka, whatever.
Oh, they make it.
You jump through some hoops, you know, and it's like people do it because they have a passion to work in the US, which I'll be honest, I don't understand. If you can be a doctor in London, or you can be a doctor in Canada, why do you need to go to, the US? You're going to make a good living either way. But people do it,
The American dream.
Yeah, exactly. Which I don't fully believe in. That's the thing.
Which is crazy. I was working with a guy from China who I was just doing language exchange with him, and he was a doctor, and he was talking. He had been a full-fledged doctor in China, and he was saying how he was waiting to find out if he got into school here so he could become a doctor here, and that blew my mind because I'm aware of the medical. At least some of the medical metrics of the United States compared to other countries, and some of these countries, man, they kicking our ass, and it's not it's not like it's a step down in quality, and it blew my mind that he had to do that, and I heard that from someone there in Colombia, same deal.
I think it has a lot to do with what, as far as the pay disparity that they may be getting. I mean, yeah, they may live a good life, but we also have to remember that a lot of doctors, whether we want to admit it or not, are in insurance companies' back pocket. So a lot of these doctors, they get one article I read is for epidurals for women in labor. For doctors, when they use epidurals, they get a kickback, which is, it was just one article. I didn't do any research. I was just doing some random reading. But as far as that goes, I think a lot of people just want that, what would be the word for that? Kind of the side income during your job. Like, hey, if I can make extra money writing a script for Cialis for somebody who doesn't need it, hey, why not? You know what I'm saying? I can't get busted for it anyway. You know what I'm saying? So I think I think it has a lot to do with the money. I think people, you can have a passion for it, but somebody's like, well, I'm guaranteed to make 250. And then with all the extra stuff that I'm getting, that's like another 150K, for example.
Yeah, but here's what we think about. We don't think about the fact that you're right about the doctor's salary, but it's not like doctors in the 1980s movie. Doctors now are in so much debt after school, combined with the level of insurance they have to have. They don't live poor, but the concept of those doctors playing golf every Tuesday that we grew up with in the 80s thinking about, that doesn't exist anymore because those insurance companies are screwing everybody left, right, and center.
I mean, and that's understandable, but I'm just saying a lot of people don't have that, don't have that foresight when they go into that. So they rack up like 500K and they're like, okay, now I'm going to get paid. Well, you're getting paid, but like you said, it's not what you thought it was. And now you got to pay that money back. So, but I think that's why a lot of foreign doctors do is because the idea of, well, I'm about to go to the United States and just make hella bank, being a doctor. And well, you're going to have to, there's some things you got to do first.
Yeah.
There's some things you got to do first to make that money. You know what I'm saying? And you're going to have to pay taxes on that. And they're going to cry when the taxes come in. So, hey, I mean.
What about this opioid crisis? Do you think that's a lot to do with dirty doctors?
No.
No?
I think doctors
I'm going to tell you why. Okay, so personal story. My mother was in a car accident about 10 years ago, and her back got broken. So the first surgery that she had, and she doesn't like to take pills at all. So part of it is because we don't have any other alternatives for like pain management here. Mm-hmm. I think that, at a certain point there's like this from what I've noticed, there's a pain point that doctors are in where they are supposed to be treating, like there's people that have long-term pain, like people like my mother who have, spines that have been crushed or other things that have happened to them where they need to have those medicines to exist. And also the drug companies were promoting that a lot, using things with Oxycontin and things like that, because what it does is basically fool your brain into thinking that you're not hurting. So you get addicted to that because you can function as a normal individual. So the reason that the opioid crisis happened is because the drug companies basically were pushing using those drugs. And then once it became a problem, they're trying to take all of that away from people. And if you become, the reason you become addicted is because you can't function without them. And just, to be able to get up and like go to the bathroom, walk and, wash yourself, do things like that are normal because you have bones that are broken or other things wrong with your body. So I don't feel that doctors in and of themselves have caused the opioid crisis. I think that systemic poverty is the biggest factor in why that happens, because if you don't feel any pain, like think about somebody that has to work a very physical job. Like people don't think about how physical working in a fast food job, working a construction job, working in retail, you're standing on your feet all day. And I know if everybody here probably has had some kind of basic job where you had a boss that was like, if you rest for 5 minutes, they're on your ass. So you got to think about, you're moving stock all day. You got to keep moving. You got to do all these things all day. You're working with hot grease and people screaming in your face all day. So when you break your body down like that, we have all these people that are in those positions where they're working 2 and 3 minimum wage jobs because they don't have the opportunity, or there's not jobs around other than those kinds of jobs to feed their families. So you get in this position where you have to take medicine so that you don't hurt, so that you can go to work and work, 20-hour days or whatever days. Because I have done that. And that's what's causing the opioid crisis. It's not just because doctors are just throwing pills at people, because they try to act like it's a weakness in the people or in the doctors. But the reason that happens is because of all these little injuries. And like I said, HR, I see those things where people have injured themselves on multiple levels doing all these jobs, and that's they're taking it to cope. And then once you try to take that away, then you just have people who are in pain and suffering on a bunch of different levels because they're poor. Right, because they're poor, not because they're too weak and they just want to sit around and eat pain pills and not do anything all day, because people are not taking them for no reason. They're taking them because they have to.
Interesting.
I have to disagree. I'm
okay.
I'm probably the youngest out of everybody. Well, I know I'm the youngest out of everybody here. When I was in high school,
I think you just said we all look old.
Hey, you
look,
take
I'm
how
all right
you want
with
to
it.
take it.
Look, I'm better old than
take how
dead.
you want to. You take how you want to.
Look,
but I was in high school and kids was taking pills in high school. Like I went to a public high school. I lived in a suburb in Minneapolis. Like, you know what I'm saying? So, but a lot of the kids that were coming in were from all over the city. So it's not just my suburb. It was the surrounding wealthy neighborhoods, even the inner city. So kids were, and it didn't even matter. It was mostly like, white and black kids that were popping pills. Kids were popping oxycodone, hydrocodone. You had kids that smoke weed, obviously, but pills isn't just now. Like, you know what I'm saying?
right.
Maybe the proportion.
I don't like to interrupt people unless it's for somebody who popped into the chat. Carolyn, can you say hello to your friend Keldrick?
Hi. Who am I?
He said, who? Keldrick Mobley said, Carolyn got me here. What are we talking about?
Oh, hey, Keldrick. How you doing?
Drugs. Talking about drugs.
You'll see.
Well, Keldrick, make sure you hit the thumbs up for us, too.
What?
I did want to make a comment just on what you're saying. I'm not talking okay, so the doctors aren't prescribing pain pills to the kids in high school. I'm just going to tell you that now. They got those from somewhere. They stole them from their grandma or went and raided their parents. They're not prescribing them for the children, I promise you.
You can buy them from Chinese suppliers.
I've seen a documentary. There was a documentary about the opioid crisis in Florida way before it became a national issue. Like people would just walk in to these clinics in Florida, say my arm hurts, and never getting scripts. This was a documentary. So this, I think maybe what happened is it's more prevalent now, but it was still an epidemic up to before this. Maybe there was more important things on the table that powers that be, whoever wanted to have more attention paid to, but this opioid crisis is I don't think this is just now. This is a long time standing thing. Like, what I'm saying? Maybe it's location dependent. But this isn't a new epidemic.
That Florida thing.
A lot of the opioid problems we're having are in some of the more impoverished parts of white America, in the Appalachians, where the factory jobs have disappeared. So it's probably not just that. Yeah, it could be people work too hard and they've broken their bones. It could be, teenagers are taking that stuff. But it seems to me from what I've read that people are sort of emotionally medicating using some of these things because the economic opportunities have fled in the same way that we saw the cocaine crisis in Black American inner cities because of lack of economic opportunities.
The documentary Godway was talking about is called The Oxycontin Express.
Yeah.
And I'm linking to that.
So I just want to say I really like this conversation in general, because that's now 3 times that, and I like to consider myself an open-minded guy, which is probably why this works, where I've heard a thing and I was like, oh, I hadn't considered that, because I have no problem changing my opinion. If I hear someone say something, I'm not one of those guys like, oh, I'm right. No, whatever, right? But that oxycodone thing, the Florida stuff, that's really interesting you say that, because I didn't put 2 and 2 together, but I have 2 friends who are pharmacists, and they were telling me about the whole pain script thing, and yeah, like I guess there was a while back, like maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and I don't know what it is now, but they would not fill a script from Florida, because Florida was becoming famous for these pain clinics. As for the opioid epidemic and where it is now, yeah, it's not really, because I didn't put those 2 facts together about the idea that it's a lot of people who are using it to cope with pain, and then where the epidemic is hitting, the opioid epidemic is not hitting the inner city. It's not breaking down the ghetto. Like, no, this is very much a I guess, I don't know what the term is, lower class white America kind of deal. The opioid epidemic, like, they gave me, I threw my back out and they gave me oxys, and I was scared. I was like, is this going to turn me into a crackhead? And they were like, nah, man, if you just take them when you're supposed to and then throw it away, you'll be fine, right? And I did that. I wasn't like fiending for oxys later, but I could see how, like, if I was constantly hurting myself and I was constantly giving that over time, yeah, you might not even notice it. You're not even going to be getting high per se, but when you're not using it anymore, then you're like, huh, something ain't quite right. Maybe I need to go feed like a vampire or some shit. Next thing you know,
if you've got emotional problems, if you have depression, anxiety, and you take
no, those are, I think, well, I don't, most of the heads I know, they weren't using oxys for the emotional stuff. That those people, they're getting hooked on stuff like
everything.
Yeah, because Xanax does that too. Like, it creates a dependency, so that, that's just like any SSRI. If you suffer from depression or have any kind of like mental health issue, that's why you can't cut those things out cold turkey. But people do take things like Xanax to get high on top of that. So if you have a prescription for something like that, for mood disorder or something like that, and you take more, it'll make you feel crazy for a little while, but you build up a tolerance. So that's why you need more and more. But for stuff like depression, they don't really have a thing that you stop taking it and then your depression symptoms come back. So that's also an issue. Once you're on it, you're just on it forever.
The way I understand it is a lot of drug addicts, as they've studied them, have troubled backgrounds. They have emotional problems. They don't take drugs for fun per se. They take them to cope. So when you have like widely available synthetic heroin, it seems kind of logical that as the economy gets bad and social problems increase, people become more addicted. Seems pretty logical to me. So, I think people will get these pills illegally, whichever way, but we can educate people to maybe take care of themselves. That's all we can do, I think.
I think one thing, you can go ahead.
Well, I have a comment and a question. So my comment is, I think related to that is some of the suicide rates we've seen among the same population. So there are, if you Google it, and I can post some of them, documentaries and articles that have been written about the increase in suicide rate among working class white Americans and poor white Americans. And this is to be related to the opioid crisis. I think one of the ways you can deal with your emotion is to just end it, but maybe a lot of people don't have the courage to do that, and so they kind of do the slow path towards death. we've noticed, though, with the opioid crisis, there's a very different response politically. So when you had the crack cocaine, what we had were increasing, people's drug sentences. It was criminalization, but now we've got a more humane approach to that problem, which is, get people medical help. I wonder with what we're seeing now popping off with the suicide rates that are happening, do you guys think that Americans are going to pay, or the American political world is going to pay closer attention to income inequality now that it's really beginning to hit on for white people and they're starting to commit suicide as a result?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. And you know why? Because for our political overseers or senators and politicians, whatever, to acknowledge income inequality, they're going to have to acknowledge their income inequality. They're not going to pass bills, and maybe I want to be wrong here, but history and human nature tells me otherwise. They're not going to do a thing that negatively impacts their position, even if it would not ruin it. They're not going to introduce a new term limit, for example. They're not going to introduce a salary cap that is farther below or much further below. So and I think Americans, we're a lot of things when it comes to politics. One thing we will point out, like, let a politician introduce something about income inequality. The first thing everyone will be all over is, well, let's talk about your income. If you don't do anything there, we're not going to talk about it. And I think they know that, or they've got to be aware of it.
Keldrick Mobley just said, to quote him, what he just said in our comments, he said, white people aren't going to do anything that makes them look bad or weak, and having a drug problem does both.
That's what you just said, isn't it?
Who said that?
Keldrick Mobley, he's in our chat. I don't know if you guys can see it. He's in our chat, and he said
I can't see
it. Yeah, because what I also do is I'm looking at our YouTube stream as well. But he said that having a drug problem makes them look sad and weak, so they won't acknowledge it. And if I'm taking this correctly, and feel free to jump in and tell me if I'm not, you feel as if acknowledging the drug problem would acknowledge the problem that white America has, and work with me on that. I'm not quite sure. What I wanted to say is that when we talk about suicide, I was in the financial industry in 2000. When was the big financial shitstorm? 2008?
2008, 2007.
Yeah. In 2008, I was in Las Vegas working, my financial firm, and doing my thing. And I remember for months after that, watching local programming, local newspapers, and hearing from friends about people killing themselves. More importantly, reports of people killing themselves, and then first their children and then themselves. To the point, one of my friends who's in the psychiatry, I don't know, smarter than I am and studies people, said that they actually have a differential between someone who kills themselves, someone who kills their children, and someone who kills their children and then themselves, because that third category comes from a place that says they feel as if their children are better off dead and them as parents going with them than the financial situation they're in. There was a very famous radio host who had a woman on talking about how she called one of her friends and said, hey, how are you and the kids doing? And her friend said, oh yeah, we're doing great and everything is okay. And she immediately jumped in her car and said, what in the hell is wrong with you? Because she knows her friend well enough to know how they joke. And she got there as her friend was about to drown her children and she had the gun for herself. Shit. Finds out later, the family had no money left. They didn't have food for the next day. No one in their family, because poor people tend to run with poor people, just as the haves tend to run with the haves. There was no one they could turn to that wasn't in already the same situation. And she fundamentally believed it would have been better for her to send her children to death and come after them than to let them wake up tomorrow with no cereal to eat. And I saw cases like that, and I know it happened in other places, even if it didn't make national news. I know from friends that I have all over the world, like you guys, these things happen.
Can I draw an analogy here? About a story that I heard. It's not an exact analogy, but it's an interesting one. So my girlfriend told me a story about the old house she used to live in. It seems that someone jumped out of the window and killed himself. She heard this strange noise, and later the police were there. And it was hush-hush. No one spoke about it. But she heard a kid saying, this is where the man fell. but no one spoke about it. It was like as though it didn't happen. It was very creepy, you know? And I think that's the analogy is people tend to sort of hide these facts. They're ashamed of them. It affects the house price, perhaps, but they're kind of just sort of, yeah, it's a shameful thing somehow. And poverty is shameful as well, I think.
Or it is perceived as shameful because we don't understand that poverty is part of a cycle. Poverty is not an accident. You know, when you actually, and Ed will tell you this because, you know, Ed shares stories about his situations as well. Poverty is a situation that, you know, it takes a lot to get out of, but it's not an accident.
Yeah, the financial system is designed on inequality, right?
Exactly.
You need people at the bottom to do the simpler jobs. No.
Yeah, you know, that's a great way to put that. I've just been trying to reconcile the argument in my mind about whether I feel capitalism is zero sum or not. And that's a really good way to reconcile that argument that I'll have to like work on later in my head. But in terms of it being an accident and pulling yourself out of it, you know, like I couldn't help where I was born. You know, that's just what it was. But when you are born into a certain environment, you absorb the qualities of that environment, regardless of what's going on. That's just how it is. And then you get exposed to other things, and you realize, okay, maybe I want to be different. But you still got all this stuff you have to deal with. You have to undo it. You have to learn. You have to figure out how to function in a way that won't have you repeat the cycle, but all you've known is the behavior that does repeat the cycle. So it's a poverty is a complex issue. I think it's so complex that even in this conversation, I'm having, you know, my thoughts and ideas about it, you know, constantly being challenged and brought up. And let me think about this, or let me dwell on that for a moment and go, because it's not as simple as you can't do this, therefore you can't make that. Like it ain't that simple. Nor, I mean, and I don't even think it's as simple as, you know, all right, so the more people are broke, you know, the more of them get hooked on drugs. Because I mean, I knew a lot of crackheads. I knew a lot of people who would never smoke weed. I mean, it just there's so so much to it. But one thing that we can't deny is that people don't want to be poor, and they don't want to even appear poor, and so it gets treated as kind of this. You know, we used to make fun of each other. We're all in the hood. We used to make fun of each other. What was the go-to insult? You got your stuff from the Goodwill. What'd you say?
I said the jugging. Everybody's
Oh,
talking
yeah,
trash.
yeah. The Rips Dozens. Where are you from? That's what, yeah. And one of the go-to ones. You got your stuff from the Goodwill, and I'm sitting here, and as a kid, like no, I was an all right, intelligent kid. I'm like, we all poor. Why are we talking about this? we should be going to the Goodwill. That's probably why we still poor, because no one's.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to get a new Easter outfit, and but. I don't know really where I was going with the idea, other than I think when we start looking at the causes of poverty and the things that exacerbate it, we get into a really complicated area, and I wish it was more simple to solve, because there would be fewer people, but yeah, you need people to do lower jobs, and then when people see that, you know, I don't think income inequality by itself. Here's something that I have thought about a lot. Income inequality by itself doesn't piss people off that much. What pisses them off is being reminded of it. Like if you have sectors of people just kind of hanging out and they don't know that homeboy, you know, down the road has got more, and it appears he works less, because we equate effort with or rather we equate physical effort and physical labor and time invested with, you know, real work. Yeah, you know, people are going to get pissed at that. I think CEOs shouldn't be paid nearly as much as they're not even close, right? But let's pretend the CEO does bring some value. It's still going to be hard to make that argument to the guy on the floor putting 60 hours in, to this, you know, this guy should be paid more than him. It's a hard thing to do.
Let's go back. Let's go back to this whole
Edward,
first half of this conversation. We talked about how the internet affects things.
Yeah.
Before 2000, when someone graduated from college and they were doing well, the only people that might have known it were their immediate family, maybe. But the people that they went to school with, they could go back, have a pizza with them, and it wasn't uncomfortable. Now, there are people who, I'll use myself as an example, I'm not rich. I just don't have any debt, and I get to travel the world at my leisure, which makes it seem like I might have more, even though that's a different issue. What I will tell you is that when people who I've known since high school see that, I wish I could tell you, and Ed, you may be able to relate to this, some of the, what would I say? I won't even say anger. I would say some of the resentment that people have when they look at you and realize, because of social media, the fact that you can just go lift weights for 2 hours every day and have that time in your schedule. But I can talk about reading 1 book a month because I have that time in my schedule. That changes things because the internet reminds people that not all of us are where I am.
That's true. It shrinks the world because it reduces space. I mean, the internet completely gets rid of physical barriers. You know, right now we're all in this room talking and chatting like we chilling at the dinner table, but we are quite literally in different corners of the globe. And so I can see, you know, I can see what I could ignore, and that's just our willing conversation. We're not talking about the stuff we see that just bombards us in advertisements and other people's media posts and all that.
Wow. Well, you know what? I want to turn a corner real quick before we get too deep in the game, because this is something that came up as you know, I'm only going to use the United States as a reference just because, I think we lost somebody. Man down. Letitia's gone. One of the things that I wanted to say is, do we live in an age right now where it doesn't matter as much when somebody finds that nude or sex video you made? I want to bring something up, right? We're talking about people now who, of course, we have people being found with blackface, right? We have people being found with the nudes. We have people being found with, and I ask everyone to do this thought experiment. I want you to think of your favorite politician. Doesn't matter who it is, doesn't matter what it is. Think of your favorite politician and then say to yourself, okay, what if I saw a 5-minute video with this politician and a 21-year-old adult of any gender having just wild, wet sex and recording it and just doing all manners of fun stuff. And then it comes out. Then one of his political enemies says, ha, your favorite politician has wild private sex with someone that they didn't want you to know they're having sex with, of whatever gender makes you feel the most uncomfortable. They're not qualified to be your politician anymore. Or they're not qualified to be the headmaster of your school anymore. Or they're not qualified to be the leader of this elite program at a university. Does that matter as much anymore? Are we at a point where everybody's got something online? Have we gotten to a point where it's like kind of beating the dead horse, where you're surprised if somebody over a certain or under a certain age doesn't have something that pops up later? Because I look at what happened with Jeff Bezos. And for those who don't remember, I'll give you a synopsis. He got contacted by, what is one of those dirt rag magazines? One of those magazines, they made a threat and they said, hey, we'd hate to share the world. We'd hate to share that you have these dick pictures with this girl online and, you know, blah, 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 blah. So, yeah, you should go ahead and say certain things that we want you to say. He posted their letter online, told all of them it's his shiny white ass. He said, yes, you're right. I have these dirty pictures and blah, 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 blah. And now I'm going to make it a big deal. I'm going to go online. I'm going to make sure it's public that you tried to blackmail me. And yes, I do have dick pictures online.
That's the world we're in now, man. You know, it's not a big deal anymore. And you know what? I think it was maybe a little while ago, but as people were getting used to this thing called the internet and how it's basically forever, anything you put out there. But you know, now you know, I think, you know what? I'll rephrase it. You know what I think it really is? Chris Rock had a joke about this a while ago with the O.J. Simpson trial, and he goes, you know, if he had been Orenthal, a bus driver Simpson, and not O.J., he'd have been in jail. But because of who he was, you know, he gets this advantage. He gets to people want to see him walk free. I think after a certain point, it's the golden rule, man. He who has the goal makes the rules, and it for regular people, like if you want to go get a job and apply for a job, yeah, if you show up in blackface, man, you got a problem. But you got some money, whatever, it doesn't matter.
I think it has a lot to do with the expectations as far as the area. So, for example, we taking Jeff Bezos into context. I mean, I think in our mind, we should think that these people have some level of decorum, that they shouldn't do shit like that. Like you shouldn't be, you shouldn't have any dirt on your past. I mean, in which, obviously we know that's not possible, but I think in our minds, we get, this is say the general person gets offended. They're like, wow, I thought this person wasn't a dirtbag. Now they're a dirtbag because we expect some level of
Stop the show.
Class.
Put it down way. Is a dirtbag anyone who has naked pictures of themselves online?
I'm not. It's in my opinion, no. But again, it really comes down to one's values of what they see.
Let's define dirtbag here, because
all right. So let's just say someone who may have had like a voyeurist, like maybe a voyeur streak of sending, dick pics to females, right? Let's just say somebody had like, a string of sending dick pics to females, and now there's some multi-billionaire, So in your mind, you're thinking, wow, this guy, he's on a pedestal, right? You put him on a pedestal, and somebody tells you, oh man, Jeff Bezos got dick pics out on the, You're like, wow, this dude was out here doing stuff like that. I would never expect that from him. It's because he's on a pedestal, he's in a different status. So I think that level of
that's a small thing. Like if Jeff Bezos cheats or sends dick pics, which is what he done, as I understand it.
No. We're talking about. I'm talking about one specific issue. The place that tried to blackmail him and said, "We know you and this girl were sharing nudes together." Does that make him somehow a lesser person?
Definitely not.
No, I don't think so. Because if he wasn't Jeff Bezos, you wouldn't give a damn. So why does it matter that that he has billions now? Why would you try to if he was just Jeff Bezos working at Target corporate, or whatever, or not even, let's just say not even an executive role position, he was some manager at some call center, he was sending dick pics. Like, would you care then? Nobody would care. You know what I'm saying? You'd be like, yo, you know what I'm saying? I'm pretty sure all of us got moments like, what I'm saying? I'm pretty sure I got dick pics floating around Brazil right now. I don't really care. Like whether I get rich tomorrow or famous tomorrow.
Hope so.
You know what I'm saying? Like it doesn't really matter. I don't think it should matter what somebody.
But I disagree with you, man. I think a lot of people would care a lot about being blackmailed, and I think it happens as a lot of like cyberbullying, especially among teenagers and stuff, where they'll say, "I have a video of you," and maybe they'll just not blackmail them. They'll abuse them and make fun of them. And I think a lot of people care about that. The average person cares. Jeff Bezos set a good example by saying, yeah, okay, do your worst. I got my lawyers.
And I was just referring to like the perspective of, more to what he was saying as to, does it make him a dirtbag? And I'm saying, no, it doesn't make him a dirtbag. Of course, everybody's going to care, that somebody has private photos of you and they're going to, exploit them to the world and damage your reputation. But I think in the realm of the question, it doesn't change anybody's character. For just if you're thinking that's something that's private, somebody shares it in some malicious intent. I think that doesn't make anybody a dirtbag for sending the pictures. At least what happens after that, that's more on the other person.
I would want to throw in my 2 cents on it, just because, like, I think as a female too, it's a little bit different because, especially now that we have the internet, it's so much easier. Like before, like if I can't tell you how many unsolicited naked body part pictures I've gotten from dudes in general, like over the course of my life, since texting and video messaging was a thing. And there's also been, situations where people's accounts get hacked and their personal photos that they shared with the spouse or whoever, where it's called doxing, where they share as a female, you know, if your butt's all over the internet, I'm like, what's embarrassing? Like, it's not like everybody got different parts. We're all the same. So naked or not naked, what difference does it make? You know what I mean? And I think it's just one of those things where we have like this conservative veneer that everybody tries to put out, like, oh, well, you know, but you know, most people still have legs and arms and their bits are in the same places. So like, whatever, I don't think it makes you a dirtbag to do it. I think for me, a lot of the issue is if the issue comes when people either participate in the blackmail where they're trying to also cover it up, or, you know, they do some other thing that's in response to the threat of blackmail. But you know, like if you get exposed, like, oh, I have naked pictures of myself. Well, I hope so. Like, how's that different?
I don't get the thing of sending unsolicited dick pics. I mean, what effect does that have? Is that ever
I don't
positive?
know. It's never positive. Like,
people send
look, I don't want
either.
Yeah,
because I'm like, what do you think people gonna be like? Oh, I never seen a penis before. That's great. Can I have that one? That's not my response.
Do you think Jeff Bezos is now going to start paving the way? Because he said in his letter, he actually said, if I don't stand up, who can? You know?
Yeah.
Basically, I'm Jeff motherfucking Bezos. If I don't
all over a dick pic, we're about to see the revolution of bullying, right? And then we're standing up.
I don't think so. I don't think people are that brave. I don't think people are that brave.
Look, I'm going to tell y'all another personal story. I have been married twice. My first husband tried to do that with me, with my parents. Like, I mean, my mom and dad were just like, whatever. It's not like, I mean, I'm their kid, but like, he was trying to be like, oh, well, you know, she sent me this and that. And I was like, first of all, you a petty little bitch. And second of all, my mother was just like, that's nice. But people try to do that in order to control you. Like, but again, if you are not the type of person, you don't have enough self-confidence to just be like, so what is my butt? Like, what are you going to do?
I think it works a lot of the time, this cyberbullying stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, I guess if companies wouldn't act like, especially like, oh, well, you know, we're supposed to have this professional image, and that's true. I mean, if you were taking home videos of yourself, like, you have to understand that if you take a video or a picture or something like that, and you share it with somebody else, after it's out of your hands, you lost the control over that image. So I think that's something that people need to think about.
Can you lose your job because of a video that gets leaked?
I mean, it depends on what industry you're in.
I think
if somebody said, go ahead.
I have a situation where a teacher's stuff is done, but I don't necessarily know if I work at, you know, the Quickie Mart. I don't know that you can be fired. But what Jeff is doing, this is the second time where, I don't know if you remember, Hulk Hogan sued Gawker. I think it was Gawker.
And won. Yeah, and he won.
He broke their company, because what they're doing now is we're swinging the pendulum the other way. Now that we know what the internet can do, they're saying, listen, no one gets to just play with the internet and expose people without worrying about it. And I think that's also because so many people now are thinking, what if it's me? What if those pictures I took when I was in college or when I was in a different lifestyle come to light? Should someone be able to, without consequence, try to use it to hurt me?
I know that California has enacted laws against doxing now. But I don't know. It's been a state by state thing. It's not a federal thing.
And for those who don't know, doxing, it means you are a private person online, but then I publish, let's say, I don't like Ed. Ed said some things about my favorite boxer I don't like. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to post Ed's private home address, his private phone number, his private email address, his private a picture of his car, and maybe the whole thing for his whole family, and I'm going to dump it online. So I can say, I didn't hurt Ed, but what if Ed has some crazy nut job that does want to hurt Ed? Now I facilitated that.
Yeah, I mean, and there's been cases where, you know, people's personal Google Cloud accounts got hacked and all their pictures and photos were shared. Things like that, celebrities it's happened to, and that's a violation of privacy, number one. And so there's laws. Used to there weren't any laws against that. So I mean, because there was I can't remember where it was. There was a website set up for angry men who were pissed off at their ex-girlfriends, and so they were posting videos and be like, "Look at this whore," and "Look at this and that,"
Revenge
and
porn.
putting
Yeah,
revenge porn. And so that's illegal now. It didn't when that first was happening. It wasn't illegal, so those people had no recourse for their address and their whole lives to be ruined and shared with people, because then you get all this like random hate mail or whatever, and people felt like it was their job to be judging people and get fired from your job because there's a naked picture of you somewhere. If that's done without your permission, like, look, if you're a porn star or that's something you co-sign on to, that's one thing. But if somebody's taking your private stuff, you don't want anybody, like most of us don't want people in our private business sharing it all over the place. So now there's laws in place to prosecute people who do that.
And there should be.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you can find the people who've done it, but if it's some guy from Russia, it's impossible. And they have these servers all over the world. I think someone said before, the internet is the Wild West. I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
And you know what? And here's the thing, because I'm Generation X, this year I'll be 42 years old. That means in 1997, I turned 20. I was 23, finishing my first or second degree when the internet really hit. You don't know what Wild West is. I'm old enough to remember when you could go online and post your name and address and say, I'm having a party Friday, and anybody reading this can come. I'm old enough to remember, like, before people even used fake names, where you were just like, that's how I got into the habit of being YusefWateef. I never changed it. Online, on all social media, forever, you'll find me that way. But because I remember those times. It really, it has changed. Now it's crazy, but. Letitia, were you about to say something?
I mean, I was just gonna say it was kind of the same thing for me. Like, I mean, when it was the first internet, all you had was like those chat rooms that were just like a name and lines of text. There was no video, there was no pictures. You just sign on to a chat list and be just talking about whatever. You could post anything. You could buy anything, and there was no tracking. There was no way for them to catch you. Like, you could do anything on the internet. Now there's a little bit more regulation because the government got involved, but like, it's less Wild West than it used to be.
But
should we hand total control to the government to regulate the internet?
No.
No.
Absolutely
No.
No.
I veto that whole idea. Veto.
Yeah, I trust the guy that's trying to steal my information and sell me some shit. I don't trust the government.
But is it okay? So earlier we were saying that there are now laws about, somebody puts out pictures of you, and I think it was you saying that, Letitia. So correct me if I'm wrong. And I don't know what state has it, but there's states where if you try to put that stuff on the internet, you can face consequences for that. Is that not
California?
Huh?
No, that's California state government. That's the California state.
Right.
It's not a federal regulation.
Okay, so maybe we don't want federal laws, depending on what it is, but we do want some kind of regulation, right? We don't want people to be able to do anything.
Well, we want regulation, but we don't want to cede complete control.
Oh, absolutely not. I don't know why it would have to be one or the other, though, right? I mean, I just feel like it's never like, so, we have free speech. You can't say anything. You can't make threatening remarks. It's the same thing.
I think the question is, are most people, is it really that much of an epidemic where you got people, sending out death threats? I think for the general population, because it's easy. I was just in a situation where someone tried to scam me on the internet, and I called the police. The police basically like, there's no crime committed. So at what degree, like, how far are you going to turn the dial to say, this is illegal versus this is illegal? And then where's the area in between? I think if we're gonna, like, free speech is free speech. Like, who was it? I think whether Thomas Jefferson, there's somebody who said that I'll defend my enemy's right to say whatever they want to say, even if it's if it's against me, right? So the internet being different, that your information is on there, but I agree there's some point of regulation, But how far are we taking it? Where's the
We
red
have to
line to
debate it,
say
right?
this
We're
is
uncharted.
this is intrusive versus this is to safeguard someone's safety?
Well, we have to debate it. We're in uncharted territory. We're new to this. You know, we may have had an opportunity, like, and I mean by we, I mean, you know, humanity, to collectively debate where we want those free speech lines to be drawn. A few decades in human history is not a long time. I think we would all probably agree, for example, that if you put out somebody's personal name and address out there, and it invites people to take acts of violence against them, that might be an area that we want to see regulation.
Well, one thing that I also know is that something that I had to become even more aware of, one of the things that I do is I set up websites for different friends of mine. And I also, my first gig that I ever tell people that I was a paid writer for was writing dating profiles. I didn't understand how dangerous it was online for women for a very long time until my women friends would say, here, let me show you my email address. Let me show you the comments on my YouTube channel, the comments on my Twitter channel. And my goodness, because when I get flack, it's going to be, Wateef, I think your political situation, you're stupid, and I think you're too liberal and you're dumb. But the things that they said to women were like, I'm going to kill you and shove something inside you until it comes out of your eyeball. And I'm like, wait a minute, she made a video about a cartoon she likes. You know, so that, because people are also going to think about this. When you come to doxing, yeah, anything bad could happen to me or Ed, but they're going to think about it, because if you break into my house at the wrong time, you break into Ed's house at the wrong time, you're going to have a real problem on your hands, you know? But that's something they're not going to think about with women. It puts women in a lot more danger. Because nobody's putting out revenge porn on men. Do you really think I care if that many people see a picture of my dick on the internet? Have fun with it.
Right. You know.
Well, that's kind of how the laws in California got put into place, is because like with the revenge porn things that we were talking about earlier, is that you know, if you like, I'm a single mother, you know, if somebody put my information on the internet, it's not just me who's in danger, it's my kids, it's the safety of my environment. So I mean, and like you said, people don't just threaten, you know, like I'm gonna beat you up, you should die. Like they're like, I'm gonna rape you and your children and everybody around. Like they are just out of control with it. So you don't know if those people are just saying some stuff on their couch and not gonna ever come. But if they have your address and your location, like then you are just like. So the reason that those laws got put in place is because of cases like that. It's because people were, you know, they're out of control with their threats. You don't know if those death threats are legitimate or not legitimate. But I mean, that's a scary place to be if somebody decides to.
Wasn't there a guy who died recently?
Like that.
There was a guy who died because he got. In fact, what happened? There were some kids playing video games, and one of them was swatted, but the police got the wrong address, so they busted into the house and killed the neighbor. I think.
Oh, right.
Well, back up for those who don't know. Can you tell them what swatting is?
Swatting is where you're playing a video game and you're on webcam so people can see you, and someone they find your address, your home address, while you're playing. They call the police SWAT team and say there's a hostage situation, there's a man with a gun, and then the police come to your house, and on webcam you see this guy get taken down by the SWAT team.
Oh wow!
Yeah, that's
It's extra.
Wow.
It's entertaining, but it's very expensive and dangerous.
And people get
illegal.
Killed. Could you imagine someone kicking in your door, the police kicking in your door, expecting an armed conflict, and you're like, what? Who are you?
Right.
In this case that I'm talking about, it was actually the neighbor who got shot. It wasn't even the kid who was playing the game.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's serious.
Can we start to wrap things up, and can we say some nice things about humanity and about give us something good to go home with? And so I want you to tell me who else should I invite for our next chat?
Dalai Lama.
Carolyn, make
the Dalai Lama.
I don't know.
That would be great.
I don't know anybody really. Like nobody that I would. Keldrick, if you're still in the chat, maybe you want to chat. with Yusef.
Okay, so give us your closing remarks.
Closing remarks. Internet obviously has given us, it's a tool, and like any tool, you can use it in whatever way that you want, both positive and negative. I think that with this tool, we're going to need to rethink the rules that we've put in place for society so that we can sort of really allow the positive aspects of it to flourish while minimizing as much as possible any potential economic externalities that are inevitable when you have a system, a market system where people are competing with each other.
Right on. Next.
I'll go. I'm happy that the internet exists because it allows things like this to take place. And you know, at the end of the day, I think people are the most important thing, and we get to get together and interact with more people, and I get to learn. So I mean, I learn to have my thoughts challenged, and it makes me a smarter guy. I feel like, and it gives me a more balanced perspective. So a positive remark about humanity is that at the end of the day, I think the internet has a greater capacity for good than evil. That doesn't mean that there is not a capacity for evil. That doesn't even mean the capacity for evil is small. It just means that the good outweighs the bad, and like all things, it'll be up to humanity to figure out how we best use it.
Right on. Who wants to go up next?
I'll go. About the internet, I think the older I get and the more experience I have, the less I use the internet, but the more I use it for meaningful things. So I think it's also a great tool, but I think there are many traps, and the thing that makes it complicated is people. That's the thing that also makes it great. We share knowledge, experience, but I don't have that much faith. I think people need to be really careful how they use the internet. That's all I'll say.
Letitia, you had your hand up before, didn't you?
I mean, that was like 30 minutes ago. I mean, I think the comment that I was going to make at that time was when we were talking about why people look down on poor folks in the United States as much as they do, and why it's such an embarrassing thing. And then my router crashed and I had to restart. So, I mean, as to that, the only reason that we have that is because we have this cultural mythos in the United States of being able to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. So, I mean, every time, you see people in Congress or, people in power who have never been faced with poverty, making these decisions about how poor people should, like what benefits we should have, what umbrella programs we should have, is because their whole life, the idea that you can pull yourself up by your bootstraps, if you work hard enough and if you have enough intelligence and gumption, you can rise, to be the cream of the crop, that's never been challenged. And so the idea that, poor people are dumb and lazy because they're poor, they're dumb and lazy for being poor, is an idea that we have in this country. And it's based in the fabric of like what we think of as being an American. And so part of the reason that all of that stuff has been gutted is because people that, they come from upper middle class or elite families already. And they're like, just like when I can't remember, there was something going on, and one of the congressional candidates were like, well, why don't have people ever tried just not being poor? Like that was his solution to why they didn't think that anybody needed umbrella programs, is just because, well, why don't you just save your money? Why don't you just do the things? Because those are things that you can do if you have already enough, but it doesn't help you alleviate the situation that you're in. You can't tell somebody, oh, well, have you tried just like not living paycheck to paycheck? That would really help you. You know what I'm saying? Like, so if you're getting, so that was a comment that I was going to make earlier before the before my internet crashed. That was relevant in the conversation. I do think that the internet is a really great thing, but it's going to be how you utilize it. I mean, I have done lots of different things in at least 5 different careers in my life, and the internet has helped with some of those and not helped with other things. But it's a tool just like any other tool, and you have to be judicious about what you share and how you share it, just like you would do with anything. If you were going to put yourself out there, you run the risk of having people try to use that against you, but you also have to just accept who you are and the ideas that you put forth. And I think it's a really great tool. So positive thing for humanity is like Edward was saying, it's connective. I mean, Wateef, you're the only person in this chat that I've actually met in person. So, and everybody else is, we're spread all over the world, the United States. And that's a really amazing thing. I think that's a great thing. I mean, I was one of the kids that used to like write pen pals all over the place, but now, I can have a real time conversation with somebody I've never met on the other side of the world, and we can exchange ideas. I feel like it's a really great way that people who might not have the means to travel can also be exposed to different ideas in different life ways, and I think that's a really positive thing.
Wow, Gonway.
Obviously, and I think just to kind of repeat other points, I think it's great. I think it was definitely something that was very innovative. I think when whoever, when at the inception of the internet, I don't think they knew it was going to have an impact that it did, and maybe they did know, but I think some of the greatest ideas, some of the greatest things that we use on a daily basis, our websites and things that are marketed on the websites that we may have never known about had we not had that channel to, kind of spread the, kind of advertise or spread the message. So I think that definitely is something that we can be thankful for. I mean, I'm kind of a person that I don't really like restrictions. So I think there's a lot of negative aspects to it, but that only because people bring that to it. So I think, we definitely something that as a group of people we can work on. But as far as positive humanity, I think it's just good to connect with people. I mean, I think especially in the United States, we've all gotten a little nihilistic and just really just chilling to ourselves. So I think maybe that's not some positive, maybe it's just some insight, but we can all kind of work to get to know each other a little more. I traveled a little bit. I went to, I've lived in Rio, still kind of technically live there, but Brazilians are very kind of open people. A Brazilian will stop and have a 30-minute conversation with you, and and you just go on your day. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's something we can learn. I think people in general, if given the opportunity, we can be a lot closer. So I think that's something that we can work on in the future.
Thank you all. I appreciate your time. I'm looking forward to doing this again in about 3 weeks. I hope you all can come, and I hope you all can bring somebody. The last thing I'll say is make sure you send me your website links so that at the bottom of this, anybody who wants to contact you guys directly can. And if any of you set up your own, let me know. I'll show you how I set this up. It takes like 5 minutes.
Awesome.
Cool.
I'm out, man. You guys have a good one.
You too.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Yeah.
Nice to speak to you.
Deuces.